what's going on, y'all? T-Bob here.
And Jake as well.
And you're about to watch a little OTB LSU.
We're going to give you all the latest, greatest between LSU football, baseball, women's basketball, softball, and everything in between.
Bottom line, if you want to talk Tigers, keep it locked, subscribe, like it. So I was going to ask you about kind of what this game, what your interpretation of the context of this game is, but I see this quote on your Twitter from Feinbaum yesterday, quote, "It's the biggest LSU A&M game ever. I think it's the biggest home game the Aggies have had since they've joined the SEC."
Yeah, so the A&M LSU one, when I say ever, I go back to since A&M LSU, that series ended when I was in college. So in the 90s there. So I don't think there was one bigger. Olin's more of our historian, and he's looked those up. I really mean since A&M and LSU joined the SEC.
Yeah.
And there's no contest. I mean, in 2012, the LSU, I think, was 10-2.
Yep.
And A&M went 10-2, ended up 11-2. They won that Cotton Bowl and the Heisman. But that game was an 11 a.m. game because each team had a loss. I'm not sure LSU hadn't lost a second by that point.
They'd already lost two. They'd already lost two at that point, yeah.
Yeah, so that was an 11 a.m. game with Johnny Manziel, Mike Evans, Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry, Mingo and Montgomery.
That's actually insane to think about. Yeah.
Jake Matthews, Luke Jokel, pair of top 5 O-line. So, I mean, it was crazy amount of talent for the 11 a.m. window, but It didn't matter as much. And there was the 2019 LSU had everything to play for. You guys were at 0% chance you were losing that game. And then, you mentioned 2 years ago, you guys came in with outside shot playoff hopes, but you were already going to the SEC title game. So it's never been both sides like this. And it's never been because it's always at the end of the season. Both teams have yet to meet in the SEC with true title hopes at stake or playoff or postseason or any of it. So yeah, I don't think that's even up for debate. This is the winner of this game is going to have a real look at the not just the college football playoff, but an SEC berth in the SEC title game. And there's no Georgia, Kirby Smart looming like the recent ones that are unbeatable, right?
Yeah, yes.
Even though they look like it. And there's no Alabama. So, whoever wins this can legitimately, their fans, their players, their coaches can legitimately start to set their sights on, hey, we can win an SEC championship.
It's crazy, man. It really is. It's crazy, too, for all the Texas hype and everything else that here we are halfway through the season, and you look up, and the only two teams without a conference loss are Texas A&M and LSU. And I completely agree with you about, in terms of being in the driver's seat and everything that it means for the goals you want to accomplish down the road. It's massive. What about this? When I look at A&M, I see a culture that is grittier and better under Mike Elko. I see a defense and players that he's maybe connecting with better, or they're playing harder. Like the team is flawed in some ways, but effort and physicality are not one of them. I know when it's winning, everything's good, et cetera, right? But how accurate is that statement from me, do you feel?
I think it's dead on. And I think the other thing is it was going good when they lost to Notre Dame, too. It was going good heading into that game. It was good coming out of that game. And you could just tell that Mike Elko and his staff, they didn't lose the guys after, hey, this new coach and it's the same old stuff. And that didn't happen. They just got better and better. So 2 weeks later in their first test, they went and were up 20-0 at halftime at Florida and were up 33-7. And then they went away from home and beat Arkansas. Then they go and, pummel Missouri. They've just been answering every challenge. I thought this weekend at Mississippi State was dangerous just because the Aggies never win there. They were coming off a bye week. I was worried that they'd lose some momentum, which I think they did. And they got it together. And look, they're to a point now where these rough games, they're winning. They've won 3 or 4 SEC games by double digits.
Yeah.
They remind me a lot, T-Bob, of LSU. I mean, you go all the way back to they both lost their first game. They both walked away feeling like they should have won it. They've both had games that they've won that you probably at times felt like they might lose.
Yeah.
Obviously, with you guys with South Carolina and Ole Miss and A&M, hell, even Bowling Green, but Arkansas in particular, that seemed like momentum was getting away from them to start the fourth quarter there. So they've just, both teams are really tough. Everything you just said about A&M, I might say about LSU. Like I was watching a little bit of the game last night. I heard them quote Brian Kelly that team's better than the sum of its parts. And they said, and it's some pretty damn good parts. And I think A&M's the same way. It's some pretty damn good parts, but they're better than some. Both teams believe, and I think both teams have their weaknesses and flaws, and it'll be interesting to see whose weaknesses look like a strength for this one Saturday.
So the element in this that is the biggest wild card to me right now is the Connor Weigman bit. And it's because, really struggled against Notre Dame. Awesome against Mizzou. Like when he plays like that, that's when you see the full potential of Texas A&M. And then against Mississippi State, somewhere in the middle between those two games. So what have you kind of identified or what's the feeling of Weigman right now? And in terms of him trying to maybe find a bit more that consistency or maybe what has led to some of the inconsistency?
Yeah, I was breaking down his game Monday with Stephen McGee, former A&M quarterback who, played in the NFL for a while, and he can't seem to figure out sometimes his feet, he thinks his feet get off. He gets a little sped up, but it's not when he watches it. It's like it's not necessarily due to the pressure. Like when he gets pressured, he's actually pretty good, if not better. Gets rid of the ball quickly. He knows where to go with it. He can. They're different. Nussmeier, I think, is faster, but they're both good at scrambling out of trouble and then throwing the football down the field. And so he can do that. It's just kind of, you just don't know when it's coming. I don't know if it has to do with certain coverages throw him off, certain schemes. It may have to do with that, but right now there is a level of inconsistency. And like you said, that Mississippi State game, he had a couple bad picks. He could have had 4 of them, but he also made some brilliant plays in that game.
Yeah.
And what I liked about it, T-Bob, is he hung in there. He didn't, when things went bad for him, it didn't take him out of the game. He didn't lose confidence. He wasn't scared to throw after that. I think he is the X factor in this thing, right? Because if he's connecting down the field like he's shown he can do, Missouri, or you go back to 2 years ago, that was Devon Achane carried that thing. But if you go back and watch, Connor came out throwing darts. He scrambled for some first downs, and he those throws to Moose, where he went up and let him make plays. So Connor at home it's a really dangerous setup, I think, for LSU. But it could also be where Connor plays like he did against Notre Dame and Mississippi State, which would be a bad combo against this LSU team. So I think he's the wild card, because if he's throwing down the field and if he's in rhythm and confident, playing like Connor Weigman A game, here's why I think it's such a big deal. So if him and Nuss if he's playing like that and him and Nuss essentially like cancel each other out, right?
Yeah.
This A&M run game has been something special so far this year. With Le'Veon Moss, obviously you guys are familiar with him. He's going to be extra motivated for this one. It's funny. We've got the Louisiana quarterback, running back. Y'all got the Texas tailback.
I hadn't considered that.
But and they're both really damn good. But if that running game, with the way Colin Klein's had it rolling this year, if you give them some early completions down the field, then I think that's the formula to make it tough. If we're as good as LSU's defense has looked lately, with your boy Whit Weeks over there leading the charge, who I can't help but love watching.
Yeah, he's awesome.
But if they start completing passes over, to all portions of the field early, I think it really opens things up for Moss and Amari Daniels and an O-line that's been, I think, the most improved unit. Got to be one of the more improved units in the country, because that group for the last 2 years had been flat out bad.
I thought
this
they
year,
looked really good. I mean, I watched the Mizzou film, part of Mississippi State. I'm going to watch more today, but yeah, I thought they looked really good, and I like this kind of almost pro style but out of gun offense. They have going. It's interesting. This is the third week in a row, Billy, where for LSU it absolutely starts with stopping the run, and it's been an interesting climb. Like first it was Ole Miss, they're third in the SEC in rushing. There's Arkansas, they're fourth in the SEC. Well, Texas A&M is second in the SEC in rush yards per game. So this is now, this is a better test than the last two. Once they pass, can they do it a third game in a row? What about my guy, Coach Moffitt? Tommy Moffitt, of course, long-term X factor behind LSU's golden era. A coach that every player that played for him in a purple and gold uniform, I mean, seems like 90% of guys will describe him as their favorite player ever, a man who I believe in fully and vociferously and emphatically. And then he goes to Texas A&M. And I told you at the time, I thought this was an unreal hire by A&M. How is he connected with this team, and kind of what role has he played in changing the culture?
Man, I sent you and Hester that picture the other day during Missouri, right? I was like, these guys will appreciate that picture more than Aggies will at this point.
Oh, 100%.
But no, the A&M players, every one of them that comes through my office for interviews and stuff, they come in there and you're sitting there talking during the breaks or before you start, and Tommy Moffitt's name always comes up. You can see it in what they look like. You can hear it because they talk about him unprompted, and they are raving. They believe in him vociferously as well, T-Bob. But I think where it really stands out is Mike Elko empowers him. He lets him set the culture. He lets him do what he's always done. And A&M had a legendary guy before this under Jimbo Fisher and Jerry Schmidt. And those two are about the same vintage, right? Jerry Schmidt left to go back to OU, and a lot of it had to do with he just didn't feel like he was able to set the culture and have the head coach back you on the punishment, if you're not getting it done. And that's not the case here with Mike Elko and Tommy Moffitt. So Tommy Moffitt gets to be Tommy Moffitt, and the players swear by him. And I just like watching him during the games too.
Drive.
Yeah, but it's great. Like, I really enjoy it, and you can see it though. You can see a tougher football team. Again, like, here's what I like. It's one thing to have fight, and that's the first thing you look for in a team is, do they fight? Do they battle? Do they quit? All those things. You need to have those answered the way you want to hear them answered. But what I like is I'm starting to see them finish. Like, they're not content to be up. They are not content to be playing. They want to finish teams. And that, to me, that killer instinct, that's developed in the weight room. The ability to do that is developed in the weight room, to be able to play like that late. And just watching that part of it. But my favorite Tommy Moffitt moment to me was against Arkansas when they punt A&M down. They punt them down to the 1 yard line. Aggies are up 21-17 early fourth quarter, and A&M goes 99 yards for a touchdown. I think they completed one pass. I think it was a 5-yard pass at the end of the drive for a touchdown off play action, which is, if there's ever a perfectly timed play action, that's it. But that was just that physicality, that toughness, and it's him, it's Elko, it's the coaching staff, but they've got guys that are these 5-star. So much is made of that 22 class and all the guys that have left, but some of the guys that have remained behind, you watch how they're playing, and because you've seen them play before and you're watching them play now, you notice it. It's night and day difference. Guys like Shamar Stewart, Bryce Anderson, Noah Thomas. There's a bunch of them out there, and you watch them play, and it's like, okay, they look different physically, and they play a hell of a lot harder than they used to.
Wow, Jake, what incredible takes.
I mean, those guys, they're just the best.
I think so. And if you think so, again, hit the like button, subscribe, ring the bell so you get notifications when we post every single day here on OTB LSU.